What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here. I am about to celebrate Space Force. I just picked up this t-shirt, found it online. I don't think it's official because they were recently announcing this logo, and this is the logo for the United States Space Force. I actually love Space Force. T-shirt smells new, and as you can see, it's black with a silk screened white logo on there, so I'm missing some of the detail. But this is what it looks like on, baby! Space Force! Yeah! Anyway, yeah, I actually did a podcast about why I love Space Force. So a lot of people were like, Space Force, do we need Space Force? It's so stupid to create a new branch of the military. Well, as I said in the podcast, there was a time when airplanes were a part of the U.S. Army, and they were actually called the U.S. Army Air Corps. And then when they spun that off into their own thing because aerial battles were in development or kind of flourishing, they called it the Air Force. And a lot of people were like, why split out airplanes from the Army? It doesn't make any sense. Well, nobody looks back on it now and says, no, it doesn't make any bloody sense. In fact, Space Force has effectively been around for a long time. And this logo, which has also been controversial because a lot of people have said, they stole in the Star Trek. This is the Star Trek Federation logo. You know, slightly curved edges are missing here. But that's what it looks like. Which is kind of funny because I'm going to talk about that in a second because it's not quite a lift. I mean, I think there's some inspiration by it. But the space realm has actually been policed and monitored by the U.S. Air Force for a lot of years, like 30 plus years. You might be familiar with NORAD and some of the like Space Command. Now, there are 3 domains of the Air Force, in fact. They say that they patrol air, cyber, and space. Those are the 3, I think, which is kind of funny to me. I'm surprised we don't have a cyber division because what gives the Air Force any expertise in, cyber warfare? But that's the 3 domains that they monitor. Now, that's kind of being spun off in Space Force, which will be its own separate thing, which I totally get. And there's a lot of things that go on in space. I don't think there are soldiers in space per se, but there are a lot of satellites. There's issues with people weaponizing them. We have obviously had missiles that can take out satellites for a long time. So, from espionage to actual attacks on, domestic soil, space is pretty wide open realm that probably needs some military or dedicated military resources. So I was just celebrating that United States Space Force, Department of the Air Force. It still is. Now, I do want to talk about this logo because people are like, hey, you stole the Star Trek logo. And in fact, if you remember Star Trek The Next Generation, you have the logo here, and then they have like this oval behind it, which is kind of represented by this little line there. So it's kind of cool. But I think since the 80s, it was called Air Force Space Command or U.S. Air Force Space Command. And this logo, this little pointer, this little marker here was a part of that. And actually, the swoosh around it, I think, was actually borrowed from NASA because NASA has like this orbiting swoosh in their logo as well. And so it was a little bit of a more vintage look to the logo. But then in the current iteration, and when they launched this logo, they basically borrowed that and modernized a little bit of look, but it looks very, very similar. So there's nothing about this that was recently created. In fact, this logo has been, as far as I know, around 20 or 30 years. So, and if it was inspired by Star Trek at some level, I can see that because there have been a lot of things from 3D virtual reality, taking inspiration from The Next Generation, holodeck, to the naming of the Enterprise for the original shuttle, and stuff like that. So if there's some inspiration, I wouldn't doubt it. And I like it. As a Star Trek fan, the more things that might materialize in real life just make me think that Star Trek is actually a glimpse into our actual future. Hey, if you want to pick up a t-shirt celebrating U.S. Space Force, I will put links to everything in the description below. Peter Von Panda, out.